Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to IHP 645, week 4. We're going to talk about our assignments and lecture this week. Unfortunately, I've been having some issues with the conversion of these video presentations into the appropriate format to share with YouTube into our classroom. I think I finally have found the glitch. So let's try again today. Okay, so this week, ladies and gentlemen, we're concentrating on process of data collection, analyzing data collection for proposed changes. We're looking at the appropriate tools for measuring patient safety, compliance, and making improvements based on those measurements and creating a patient safety plan. We're going to look at the role of technology and its impact on the organization. And then we're going to, last but not least, is take a look at the mission and vision of the organization and determine how it lines up with the particular safety plan you are proposing. Many of you in your first draft might have been a bit too narrow on the issue that you selected. What I suggest is please make sure that as you go through your patient safety plan that you follow the prompts, you follow the directions in the overviews and the setting that has been created for your safety plan. Ladies and gentlemen, your first assignment for this week is going to be your case study. Please note that you have to have a few paragraphs here for the case study. I do not count as original writing for purposes of those few paragraphs the restatement or the statement of the pertinent facts to the particular case study. In your 2 to 3 paragraphs, you're to address the following question: what error occurred? What factors were involved in the occurrence of this error? What improvement strategy should be employed to analyze the issue and then plan for prevention? What data should be collected to monitor the process, balance, and outcomes of the proposed changes that you would suggest? What data should be collected to monitor for outcomes and change? When should the data be collected and who should collect it? What role should technology play in the collection of the patient data? And besides collecting that data, what other measurements could be used to determine change or success for your particular proposal here, and support your case study with at least 2 reputable sources? That means you must have citations and references to at least 2 reputable sources. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to say this, and I will say this a couple of times. Please do not try to reinvent the wheel. The prompts that you are provided are in an outline form for a very specific reason, starting with the introduction all the way through the information required in your patient data plan. I suspect you may want to vary from this in some respects, and that I don't have a problem with. But the real issue is if you miss any of these prompts, then you're going to lose substantial points, because this is the minimum that you have to cover. And what I recommend is using the outline that is provided for your section and subheadings. So for example, in the first portion, you are going to want to have introduction, and then your subheading would be mission of the organization. And then your second subheading would be how does the purpose of your proposed patient safety plan support or align with the organization's mission or vision, and provide some examples of how the plan integrates the organizational culture into the STEEP care method. And then, of course, next is scope of the plan. Again, scope should be your first subheading. Your second subheading should be priorities. Third would be errors that are addressed by this plan. Your fourth subheading would be the terms that you will use that will be specific to your plan. So for example, if you're going to use the SERPTA example from your textbook, you would definitely need to use SERPTA in its full sense, identify the infection, and then, not the infection, but the reaction, And then, of course, you could use an abbreviation or um, initialization if you want. Then methodologies, our improvement methodologies would be your next section. And then what are the most appropriate internal sources of patient safety data? So that would probably be your next subheading. Yes, right there. Okay. What are the pertinent regulatory and accreditation requirements? What does JCO require? What does AHRQ? Are there any regulations or things that you need to address through Medicare, Medicaid, and CMS services relative to this safety plan that are requirements for reimbursement? Okay, and then you're going to last, how would you or what methodology or data would you use to measure your success of your patient data plan? And if you follow all of those prompts and outlines heading, subheading form, you will know you have the minimum required. Now, that does not mean you are not allowed to add additional information under the appropriate portions of that outline. Okay. So when we look to the limitations of IT and CPO, the computerized provider order entry this week, one of the things that I want you to be very aware of and cognizant of is IT has to be approached with a degree of caution, a degree of leeriness, and a absolute requirement for common sense, as was exhibited by the Septra case, which is in your textbook. Human interface and human factors are a very important aspect of it. And human interface and human factors are, I'll give you an example. We've got a 90-year-old person who's expected to use and measure their own insulin through an insulin pump. Is that insulin pump designed sufficiently so that person, sorry about that, I hit my cursor. Is it designed so a 90-year-old can see it, for example? The lettering, how big is it? Are the buttons big enough? Is it something a person who is suffering from memory loss, is it something that gives them enough memory, or not memory, but enough cues for when to use and when to check? One aspect of common sense would require us to question dubious and clearly dangerous orders. In the healthcare course I cover, and I suspect most instructors are going to cover with some great amount of detail, an override. When we look at value-added features of the electronic health record systems, we look at order entry, we look at decision support, we look sign-out and scheduling systems, we look at links to all the necessary data. For example, you can bring up x-rays, you can bring up labs, you can bring up electrocardiograms, you can bring up anything that has been performed and is reported within the in-house system. And then, of course, automatic reports can be generated by virtue of the system. The role of reporting in patient safety is quite simple and quite necessary that you meet all of the requirements for patient safety. And these are some of the things that your author reminds you of are very pertinent. For example, errors can happen one at a time to individual patients who are often quite already ill and down the line. So I suggest you take a look at these. These are things that you're going to want to consider in developing your plan. Anonymous reports are ones in which there is no identifying information asked of the reporter. Although they have the advantage of encouraging reporting, anonymous systems also have the disadvantage you can't follow up to make any further review or determination of actually what happened. Most systems, when we're talking about data reporting to major databases like JCO or Joint Commission or AHRQ or CMS, most of them are done on a anonymous basis, and the reason they're done on an anonymous basis is this data is collected to create in the future practice guidelines, core measure sets, things along that line of inquiry. In a confidential reporting system, the identity of the reporter is known, but it is shielded from anybody other than the authorities or regulators or representatives of the legal system, unless, of course, it's a clear professional misconduct or a criminal act, of course, which then the ID is readily available to the professionals. Sorry about that. The effectiveness of our reporting systems, again, they're only as effective as the data input, as the common sense that's used in the input of the data. Institutions must have support and for their systems with a supportive environment for the event reporting that protects the privacy of the staff who reports the occurrences. The culture must be one that engenders and draws out an individual's ability to over time to create the environment that if you do report, you are going to be protected and nobody is going to try to expose you. Reports should be received from a broad range of personnel. Everybody should be encouraged to report any incidents or anything that they think could cause errors, near misses, things along those natures. They must be reported in a timely fashion. And last, a structured mechanism must be in place for reviewing those reports and developing an action plan. This is a hint. This should be something that is included in your safety plan. You must let us know who would be responsible for the review of and how the information will be disseminated to your patient safety board. Major categories for a hospital incident reporting system: anesthesia, behavior management, cardiac and respiratory arrest, confidentiality and consent issues, controlled substance issues, diagnosed treatment issues, dietary services, environmental safety, falls, injuries, home care issues, infection control, IVs, tubes, catheter, laboratory results, medical devices, medication-related events, patient flow issues, patient property loss, radiology issues, security issues, skin issues, sterile processing issues, skin issues, I think I already had that there, transfusion issues, and any unprofessional staff behavior. To whom do you report? Reporting will be available to internal safety boards and committees, which we discussed should be included in your patient safety plan as to how and whom it's reported to and how often and who will be responsible for review. The Joint Commission, the American Hospital Reporting Quality Standards Organization, state orgs, and malpractice carriers, among others. These are probably the most important. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot stress to you, and I am a huge fan of root cause analysis. I just believe that one of the ways that you are going to get to the problem and you are going to address that problem is to get to the very root, and that will require that you follow the patient's care in, and one will have to review the records up to and at the point of where injury occurs. Those things that can contribute to those injuries must all be looked into with a great deal. Understanding patient safety, your textbook does a really, really good job in addressing this issue of root cause analysis. I would strongly recommend that you read the elements to a successful root cause analysis. Of the main elements, the author lists strong leadership and facilitation skills within the organization, an interdisciplinary team approach, that those individuals who participate in the case should be invited to tell their stories. In other words, transparency from all within. Some institutions will also invite other frontline workers, those that were uninvolved, to root cause analysis to assist and get to the root cause, and then educate those that were involved in how to avoid what was the cause of injury. A successful root cause analysis plan also will focus on identifying corrective issues that will prevent future harm. And last, it will ensure that those corrective actions that are suggested are indeed implemented and sustained within the organization. The goal of root cause analysis is to identify system factors that led to the error and to suggest solutions that can prevent similar errors from causing error in the future. Root cause is not, repeat, is not to be used as an intimidating factor to try to find out who is responsible as much as what is responsible and what within the system are what systemic reasons or errors or flaws in the way things are processed or the way things are set up or the way routine procedures are handled actually led to that issue so it can be addressed in future and prevented. Some have suggested that the term root cause analysis is misleading in some sense. One of the reasons they feel it is misleading is that from when we looked at the Swiss cheese model in the beginning, most adverse events and errors have multiple holes in the cheese. And I have, ladies and gentlemen, added to lecture week 1 the PowerPoints that I prepared. The recording never made it, but I did add them. Okay. High reliability organizations defined as an HRO have some things in common. One is preoccupation with failure. Yep, preoccupation with failure. The acknowledgement of high risk, error-prone nature of an organization activities and the determination to achieve consistently safe operations as is on the mind of everybody in the forefront of patient safety in these HROs. Commitment to resilience, the development of capacities to detect unexpected threats and contain them before they cause harm or to recover from them when they do occur. I would also suggest that resiliency also comes with it. It's accompanied by a term we refer to in business more commonly as agility. Are or is your organization agile enough to react and respond and correct the situation? Another thing the HROs have in common is sensitivity to operations, the attentiveness to the issue facing workers at the front line, both when analyzing mistakes and in making decisions about how to do the work. Management units at the front line are given some autonomy in identifying and responding to threats, rather than being forced to work under a rigid top-down approach. And last but not least, and this is something we clearly want to see you address in your patient safety plan, and that is developing that aura of a culture that is accepting to and willing to do everything necessary to place patient safety at the top, which will include making substantial changes when necessary. And when you look at potential hazards and what one would expect if they are involved in a situation with a potential hazard, we don't want to have a culture of intimidation, which would be one where you are afraid for a retribution for actually making an error. Okay, so that is kind of important that you have that culture that we're not out to get you, but we're out to fix the problem. Institutions define a safety culture in terms of the following questions. Do workers report errors? Is there a no blame culture? Is improving patient safety listed in the strategic plan? The role and function of a patient safety committee. I want you to keep this in mind as you do your milestones and your final project. The role is managing incident reporting systems, dealing with that data, and I would add to it, dealing with that data in a timely manner. Examples of types of institutional data that should be regularly reviewed by patient safety officers must be defined in the patient safety plan and be under the function of the safety committee. Also, you must have strategies that connect senior leadership with the frontline personnel who are responsible for developing and implementing a patient safety plan. You should also have strategies in place on your committee that generate frontline activity to improve safety and quality of care. You should deal with major errors and sentinel events timely, professionally, and accepting responsibility where necessary. When you deny to a patient that nothing happened or you try to cover it up, that's where you get those huge judgments against an organization. Transparency and honesty has to be an important aspect of any patient treatment and correcting any errors or sentinel events. You also must, as a member of a patient safety committee, deal with major errors and sentinel events, come up with plans to address them, modify or amend your patient safety plan as required. You also have to have a failure mode and effects analysis. So if for some reason you have a failure in one of your aspects of your plan, you need to do an effects analysis and you need to come up with a contingency and or a workaround of the situation so you can put your actually not workaround but actually amendment to your plan so you can put your ducks back in a row. The safety committee also looks at qualifications and training of those who serve on the committee as well as the patient safety officer. The committee also defines the roles of the patient safety committee itself. They also engage physicians in patient safety dialogues. They also engage and this should be board engagement. They engage the board of directors. And last, they are constantly researching in patient safety. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, that is week 4. I'm hoping once this converts, you'll be able to take a look at this. The actual word lecture and PowerPoints will be included as part of your weekly announcement lecture. If you have any questions, if you need any assistance, please feel free to call me, 801-940-2531. And again, I will reiterate, please do not try to create your own patient safety plan, creating your own outline of what you think should be included there, but use the prompts as the basic minimum outline and use the headings and subheadings from the prompts that are provided to make sure you have all of the required or requisite elements in your plan. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.